attached here, warmed up, and the only thing I'm seeing is it's running about 700 RPMs, but it'll drop 50 RPMs. It'll surge, and we can actually see that. Let's walk around a little bit. Why it's surging, I don't know. It's definitely an idle circuit issue. It's on the idle. And if you watch the display, if you can see it, right? But other than that, it's quite smooth. I'm going to let it run for a little bit and I'll check the plug. You can also see it over here on the needle. And you can hear it. But it's very smooth other than that. I mean, it's just about perfect. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little less idle air coming through this. So I'm going to test that later on. The bypass air might be surging it. Might be too much bypass air. So that's something to test. And it's got a little bit of a stumble. A little bit. Okay? Once it comes up, it's sweet. So we'll see what happens. Let it run a little bit longer. I'll be back. Okay, now my next step is I'm going to work the air bleed on the top. I want to show you, and I hope you can see it. That is the plug. And it is pretty damn white. Alright? It's a little too lean. And I do have a little bit of a lean miss. So what we're going to be looking at is, these are the brass transfer tubes. And this one here is the jet. It's the fuel jet. And I've showed you those earlier. They're the brass tubes. And this is the down feed restriction over here. So fuel comes from the main jet, you know, through the rods and everything, these rods here, and it comes up this jet here. So this is what we call the fuel jet. So fuel is coming right up through this jet, and down, this is held in place by a ferrule over here, bushing. So down the bottom of that jet is a restriction. It's not up here, it's down below. So you have to take this out, and I've showed you that already. That I have set to 39 thousandths, 039. A lot of guys will run 037. And that seems to be a good setting for most people. Because my spark plug is so white, and I've gotten control over the rest of the circuits, we need to do something a little bit more to bring a little bit more air and fuel down in there. So here's what I've come up with. So I'm up to 039, and that's about as far as I'm going to be comfortable for now going. I have found through some other tests that if I went a little further than that, it was not good. This is the down restriction. All right, and I've opened that up pretty far too, and I found that you go too far on that, you run into problems. So it comes up through this jet, through the restriction, transfers in this little cavity here, which is, if you look on the air horn, it's this cavity here and here, and this cavity, and this is the air feed for it. So we're going to get to that in a minute. So it comes up through this cavity and then down this main restriction. That main restriction feeds basically the area right where your adjustment screws are down here. Okay? So that main restriction is the total amount of emulsified air and fuel that's mixed in this chamber here with the air from the air horn bleed down through here to the jet, to the screws down here, the mixture screws. So if you've got to back out your screws all the way and you're not getting anywhere and you're too lean, you've got issues up in here. Okay? If you put the screws in all the way and nothing happens, you've got issues in here. Depending upon whether you're fat or you're lean, you're going to have to make adjustments. Here I'm at 070. Okay? And that is an idea of basically where that jet is. Get a little bit closer, and maybe I can show you a top view without it getting too blurry. Okay, that's the main restriction going down the idle passage, all the way down to the throttle plate where the screws are. I've already modified that. It's running very well, but it's creating plugs that are a little too white, and the transition when I want on the throttle, it's a little off. All right. Now I do have idle bypass air, which I'll get to in a bit. I've already showed you that, but I'm going to get to that again. So this could be a little bit better. So how am I going to address that now? Well, now I'm going to move to the only thing I have left to adjust, which is the air bleed. Now, the air bleed, these are those 070, those main down tube restrictions, 070. Okay. My air bleed in the air horn is at 085. Let's push this out of the way. It's at 085. Okay, and that's it there. It's actually a little bit bigger. I don't think I have a drill bit for it. So we're going to zoom in a little bit more. Okay, that's it right there. Okay, where the drill bit is. So I've got to reduce this. Now I don't know how I'm going to do that yet. I have some brass restrictions and tubes, but I've got to get it. If the main down restriction is at 070, and this is at 085, I don't want to take it down 10 thousandths. But if I can go 5 thousandths each, somewhere in that range, I think I'll be pretty happy. To give an estimate of it, I have another body that I was playing around with, and it was 075 stock. So that's 10 thousandths less. And I remember that ran a little bit rich, but I didn't tweak it as much as I tweaked this one. So let me see what I can come up with here, and I'll be back in a minute and I'll show you how I'm going to try to figure out. One way you could do it is you could just peen over the end and re-drill. Another way to do it is fill it with epoxy and drill. I don't like epoxy because it just doesn't seem to last. So let me see if I can find something brass to stick in there. And I may be able to steal one of these tubes from another body. And that might give me the size I'm looking for, which is about 080-ish. Alright, so we'll be back. Okay. Alright, I was right. So, on this particular one, I drove out the brass insert with a punch, and this is the insert here. Very, very large. And yes, this tube here is the same diameter. As with most of the holes, they're drilled basically the same, as a few variations. So I took one of these, I have an extra one, I cleaned it up, and I put an 059 drill bit in it, because that's the size I'd like to try, because I can always re-drill it. You can drill this out. I think these tubes are, let's see, I think they're like 080 or something. They're fairly large. Let me see if I can get a measurement on that. Yeah. They're fairly large. They are stock there like 076, 077. So that's a good size just in itself. That might be the size I wind up with. But what's nice is I can drill this out. So I started off, so this will fit right in here. It still has to be cut, but it will fit right in there. As you can see, these fit. And they will go in there. And I have to press that in. So once I clean up that bore, I'll be able to press that in, no problem. And I will check that. But as far as I can tell, they seem to be the right size. Now you can always pull off a little material. This is 025-ish. And this, the thing that came out, this is 024, 025. So it's basically the same. So they're all the same. So I took the 059 and I put it in here, and I just crushed it down with a pair of pliers and a vice grip over the barrel of the drill bit. So I'm at about 060. Okay, so that's a good place to start. I'm going to clean this up, and then I'm going to cut it to size, and then I'm going to drive it in. So that's the next step. Let's see how it works out. So I just kind of flared that down a little bit so that the drill bit fits in there nice. So yeah, it's wobbly, that is, but this will peen it over. I might make it a little bit tighter so that I can drill it to the correct size that I want. So that's what I'm going to work on next, and see how I can sort of flare this downward. And basically pliers seem to do a good job. It's brass, so it's soft. You could also solder it, which is another thing I might do, which is just solder it rather than make a mess of it. Solder it, and then I could drill it to any size that I want, which I've done that in earlier episodes. So I might just do that, because that's actually easier to get the solder in there than to try to crimp it over, because you can tend to make a mess of this stuff. So that might be the next thing I do, which is put a little bit of acid in it and stir it up to clean the inside and make up my little solder rig. And then this way I can keep drilling it and I don't have to worry about the density of it. So that's the next step. We're going to clean this up and solder this up and cut it to size and tweak it, and let's see where we go. I'll be back. Alright, I've got it in a little die to hold it, and I'm going to take my torch, a little big torch here, but my propane is empty. I forgot to get it out of the canister. So the acetylene will work. I'm just going to heat it, let that acid do its thing. Starting to go in. Get some more acid on there. Fill this tube because I can make more than one piece out of it. On the very top to put a drill bit in, but let's see what we got. Okay. Now, I've prepped it up. I don't think you can see it, but I'm using the die to hold it in place. And it's blocked up on that end. So the idea now is you don't want to try to fill the whole tube, because you want to use the tube as a pilot. So we're going to make the first piece. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just hold it with the pliers and drill down. And this should help pilot me. There you go. Okay, so I got the first one drilled. That's drilled. Now I'm going to cut it to size. So it's going to be cut at the same size as the old one, probably just a tad longer. That's nice. And that's not going to go anywhere because you don't have any kind of epoxy or crap like that playing games with fuel and alcohol and causing problems. It just gets you in the closer to a center hole and trying to punch it or whatever, or trying to start the hole in some other fashion. It's just easier. There are other ways to go about it. I have actually been able to pull it off. Let's move that back there so I don't lose it. It's still usable. So that's our piece right there. That's it. And if you want, you can put in a little bit of acid and clean it up, or you could just try to spin it off on a little Scotch-Brite. Hold it with a pair of noses. Try not to lose it. It's not going to be easy to clean. Acid works better. I'd like to put a little lubricant on that if I can. Got a ways to go. Flare the bottom end, the end that I'm sticking in, a little bit to get it started. This is going. have to do that. May have to flare this a little bit, sand it. Just to get it started. See what it looks like. Right. Not bad. So before I cut this, that's the end I want to put in. I'm just going to take it over on the machine and just put a little on it. Okay, got it fixed up. Let's drive out the old one. She's out. Save it. Let's drive the new one in. Bevel first. Just a touch of lube. Alright, now I'm just going to go over a couple of things. So far I'm pretty successful. So I found a little different set of adjustment screws, and I wanted to make sure that they were large enough that they penetrated through the body, through the hole, and these do. And so let's see if I can get in a little closer. So I went over the idle screws. I found a set that actually penetrated in, and these are, and the circuit itself, the hole is bored out about 100 thousandths, just to increase the range. But you don't want to go any more than that. I find you're just going to cause problems for yourself. So that's what I did there. The transfer slots for idle bypass air, I think I showed you that before, and I'm using a set screw I put in from the other side, and there's some pictures of that. These are at 70 thousandths, and we'll explain that in a bit. So they're here and here, and it comes up to the top of the air horn, filtered air. The purpose of that is to add enough air to the engine to meet air requirements, total air requirements for the engine in terms of idle operation. If you have to turn your curb idle screw out too much, you're going to open up this transfer port, and that's going to cause problems. So where I am right now, and what we're going to do is I want to make sure that I'm closed all the way. That's closed all the way. So I am one turn, and one turn results in a very, very small throttle angle, just uncovering these transfer ports here and here. So I'm not quite halfway on the transfer port. These are the transfer ports here. So if you have to back out too much, if you have to turn that screw in too much to gain acceptable idle RPM, you've got a problem. You want these throttle blades almost closed. You really want to be idling on the idle circuit. So I have it one turn past dead stop, one turn past flat primary blades. By the way, look at how nice these things came out with the plating system that I have. Completely restored. So that's just opening up this slot just off of you know, curb adjustment on the curb screw over here. It's one turn from the point of where the throttle blades are completely closed flat. So I'm forcing really all of the idle air, fuel, emulsion, everything idle circuit through here and through these transfer slots. And then this is the bypass air to adjust for just general overall volumetric efficiency of the engine to gain RPM. So that's what that's for. So these got to open up. Some people go to 100. I found 70 was good because I'm already kind of lean. So if I go to 100, I might gain a little bit more RPM. I could close the throttle shafts a little bit more. And they maybe would be completely closed. That's not really where I want it. considering I am a little bit lean, I think it's these are all kind of compromises. 70 thousandths here gave me the ability to just put one turn into these adjustments here, into the curb idle adjustment, so I get a little bit of a transfer slot. And let's flip the carburetor over the right way. Over here, this is the screw I'm talking about. This is your curb idle screw to open the throttle shafts. So it's one turn. That's it. It's damn near perfect. What's the next thing I want to talk about? So idle air bleed. And you should be able to see those if I just grab the carburetor and the camera and try to zoom in there. I don't know. You can see the brass bleeds right here where my finger is. Just about see them. See, unfortunately, I can't get this camera to do the right thing. So that's where they are, right in here on this carburetor. So those are out 50 thousandths. What did I put them to? So those were out to 50 thousandths. And they were at like 80 or 85. I forget what it was now. Take a look. Let's see what I had them set to. I write everything down in series of tests. Yeah, they were 80 thousandths, 80 to 85. I saved them so I can check them later. So that was too much. Plug I showed earlier the plug running lean, almost perfect. You know, the plug was almost perfect. Almost perfect. But I had this little bit of what I call idle wobble, where it'll hunt 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 RPMs sometimes. With the 262, 270 cam that I have, you know, you might get a little bit of that, but we'll see if we can tune it out. So reducing the air, going down into the mixture for the idle, should fatten it up a little bit. So the balance is this, all right? I can't reduce the idle air or override, the bypass, because I won't be able to turn the throttle shaft down any further if I do that. It'll maybe 50 thousandths from the 70 that I'm at now. I might be all the way dead down. It could be tested later. I can always pop out the set screw and put another set screw in at 50 thousandths. But I left it at 70 because I think one turn, just a little bit of idle adjustment, that gives me a little bit of play right there without going too far, adding too much air into an already lean situation. So, just to recap before I stick this on there, one turn there, 50 thousandths up top, the plug will get a little bit richer. It should. And I'm at about 20 degrees of advance right now, and I'd like to be about 25, 34 total. So this is 20 at idle. That's with vacuum advance on. So once the engine starts up, it sucks on the vacuum advance. I don't go to ported vacuum. That's emission shit. I go the old school way. So once I adjust the idle, I bring it back up to 20, maybe 25, and see where my throttle angle is. Hopefully it won't change from here. And my target RPM is anywhere between 6 and 800. Why do I say between? Because I'd like to be 600 in gear, because you don't bang, right? If you go from 700 to 600, you're not going to get a bang. It's a very light stall speed converter, and I really want this on the street. The car used to be extremely fast. It's a 400-something cubic inch Pontiac Ram F4 aluminum head engine with gigantic valves and everything. But I can make it streetable. So I say 800 because that's about the max I want at idle, and maybe 750-ish stable, so that when I put it into gear, it's not going to bang in, it's only going to drop a little bit, and I want it stable. So this is where we're at right now. We're going to test this out, put this on here, and I'll do a nice run and test and see what it does. Wish me luck. Hopefully I've nailed it. Okay, these are the plugs from the previous carb tune, the second to last one, and I think the tune that I just made now I haven't run yet. I'm going to clean these, but we can see they look pretty damn good. Okay, they're starting to pick up that chocolatey brown tan color, and of course there's some mixture issues. Dual plane manifold, big valves. It's the big manifold, the RPM. I think it looks pretty good. So a couple that are a little darker than others, but I just tweaked it up a little bit. It should be the last of it, and I did now on this run. I opened up the idle bypass from 70 thousandths to 100, get a little more throttle, less throttle angle out of it, and that'll get a little more RPMs out of it. And I did the idle restriction down tube. I moved that up to what, 69 thousandths or so from 67 or whatever it was set at. So I enlarged that a little bit, have a little bit more fuel coming down to compensate for a little bit more air from the bypass. And then the idle air bleed at the top of the air horn, I opened that up a little bit more from what, 50 thousandths to almost 60. So that'll give me a little bit, clean these up a little bit. So I think that'll be it. So I'm going to take a few pictures of this and I'm done. Okay, this is the second test. And I really think at this point these plugs are still a little lean. I don't know how well you can see it, but those are really clean except for the one, number one, and number two, the front, which makes sense. So I think the idle bypass there has to go. I'm going to plug it. Especially this one is quite white, and so is this one too, which is really close to the carb. Another thing too would be to check the carb gasket underneath. Maybe lift the carb up a little bit so that it shares the mixture. There's a couple things I can do. It's a little tiny bit of surge at idle. You know, it's idling at about 750 and then maybe hits 800. At 6 in gears to 625 to 650, and you hear, and that could be a lean surge. So it is a little lean. I'd like to see them a little bit more chocolatey. So that's for another day. Okay, I'm going to go through the steps one more time since I have to make a mod here to this carburetor, and this is the 80s version. This is the fuel tube extraction sequence. So, a couple of things that I've got ready, which is a little screw from the hanger bracket, and there's also elsewhere on the carburetor, sometimes even on the throttle shafts that hold the butterfly in. So if you have any extra carburetors, this will work. This works very well in removing the ferrule. Because it's very fine thread and it doesn't leave a mess inside the ferrule, and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to start off with driving down the actual fuel tube itself very carefully. That's it, bottomed out. You don't want to bend it, so tap it light. I'm going to drill these out. That it slid right down. There you go, and that one slid down. And I'm going to take this screw and I'm going to drive it in until it's bottomed. Until it just starts to tighten up, and I leave a little bit of extra to grab with the large dikes. By the way, this is another screw that works very well. I'll put this back in a bag of goodies that I keep with this kit. And now I'm going to remove it. Take my dikes and just grab underneath. Make sure you don't hit the power valve. And just pry up. Takes a little bit. And it came right up. Okay. Hopefully you can see that. Now I'm going to remove it carefully. So the idea here, now they may be stuck when they're new, when they're original. Put this to the side because we're going to reuse that. Put the next one in. So it might be a little bit more difficult. You can use a more aggressive screw. You can buy some of these kits online. I can also get them if you have a hard time finding them, and if you need help, over to at optonline.net. And I do make these carbs and sell them. Okay, that's the other one that came out. Now I've had these in and out a few times, so I've kind of tweaked them a little bit so that they go in snug, but I can get them out. And you could oh, that belonged in here. And you can actually set yourself up with a jet that you're modifying and make it a little easier to come in and out, and then take another needle jet, a newer one or another one that's tighter, and put that in for the final. So they can actually you could set them up so they just kind of slip in and slip out. But you want to be careful that you don't make it too loose, because you don't want to drive the ferrule in too deep. So that's what it look like here. And let's see if I'm getting a good shot of that. Yeah, I think hard to focus on that. So let's put these to the side, and I'm going to put that screw back in my little kit for next time. And now we got to go in there and pull out the. So I like to use one of these little files because it grabs it, and that's the first one. Now I set these up for, sometimes you can drive them in too far. That's okay. This one got a little bent, but I think it was bent before. That's alright, as long as the tube is straight inside the restriction. So we're going to just put this to the side for a minute. So the next step for me is I'm going to drill these out. And I believe these were 39 thousandths. So get out my little pin vise. In my kit. Got a little drill kit here. I'm pretty sure these were out at 39 thousandths. Yep. So I'm going to go up to the next size. And I believe I have a 40 thousandths here. Yeah, this is 41. So I was at 39 thousandths. So I'm going to go up to 41. Almost 42. This is basically 41. And I think I have a little video of the plugs that came out. So now I got to deliver a little bit more fuel into this mix. So I'm going to carefully slip into 41 a little bit at a time. There we go. I'm going to make sure I really, and it's good to polish it a little bit, and you're just taking the shank and sort of reaming it, honing it in there so that you don't have any burrs left from the drill itself. Professional carb and choke cleaner, and you got to be professional to use this, otherwise you can't use it. Exactly. Blow it out. That's one done. I will check to see if I have a drill bit a little bit bigger. I'd like to bring it out maybe just like another thou. This is a quality 42, so it qualifies at 42. And that's just a little bit bigger. This is at 41, so we're going to take it a little bit bigger, because we're only going from 39 to 42, so that's 3 thousandths. And this is just basically rolling the brass, since it's such a soft material. Oh, that's plenty big. And this is, the fuel comes up this way through the port. through the restriction and up the tube, and up to the top of the body. So mix this air coming in from the restriction up top and the air horn. So there's an orifice there. And then down the restriction, the main restriction, down to the bottom of the throttle plate, down to the body, down to the throttle plate, basically where the screws are. So if your screws are not really doing anything, this is one of the places you want to look. You may not be getting enough fuel down there. Just drive it down. Use a little block of wood if you want. You just don't want anything that's going to leave junk inside. That's fine. You can use a lead hammer if you want. These go on pretty easy. This one fits a little bit nicer. And just to make sure, you want to deburr it. So I'm going to take a little Scotch-Brite and then a little bit of crocus cloth. You don't want any burrs. And since I banged on it a little bit, take your drill bit, check it, make sure you're okay. And now we're going to put them back in. So let's get a shot at that. Let's pop them in. Low on battery. So they go in right here. One's there. And these I can almost just press in by hand. And I have a little punch for it. You could use a drill bit that fits. I have a little punch somewhere around here. Perfectly. You can make one from a drill bit or whatever you got. Just machine it down. And just making it flush with the top of the casting. You hear the sound. Okay, that's it. You know you're in. And that's it. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check the down channel restriction here, and I'm going to write down my measurements, and that's this restriction here, and I'm going to make a decision as to whether or not I want to drill that. So I may want to open that up a little bit. It depends on what drill bit I have. I don't want to go too far. You get into a certain range and you don't want to go any further. So I'll be back with that in a minute. Okay, and the last step, I'm going to bring these down tube restrictions to 073. They were at 070, and I'm going to bring them up a little bit. That's the total volume of air and fuel emulsified coming through the other two orifices. So this is actually quite big. But I do have a restriction here. I am lean on the plug slightly. So hopefully this will give me a little bit more mixture adjustment. Now this is the down tube restriction, and these are the bushings that I made earlier. So if I'm not happy with it, I can always remove the bushing and make up some more. As long as you have extra material. But let's just hope I don't have to, because I really don't want to. I've been in this carb a lot. We're going for another 3/1000, which can make a huge difference. Blow a little carb cleaner through it, and we're done. Wear glasses. And just hit my face. That's it. Okay, so now I've got it set up the way I want it. We're going to put it back together again. So just as a review, if you looked at my plugs earlier, from the shot I'll put up in the video, or either video or the shots that I'll put at the end, you'll see that the plugs are a little bit lean, and we want to fatten it up a little bit, so this is the way to do it. And this will also give me a little bit more control on the screws. Now I have some control on the screws, this should give me even more. I'm not going to change the idle bypass air from 100 thousandths. I'm going to leave it because it gives me a good throttle position, which I'm going to recheck down here. I can look at the carb and count the number of turns because this is the way it ran. So we're going to put it back, but I can actually count it right now and check to see what's going on there. So that'll give me a good amount of information to work with as I move forward, and I think this should be the last time. This is the kind of thing that you don't see a lot of people do. I certainly don't see anything on the web. When it comes to tuning a Rochester, at some point you're going to have to go in and deal with the power valve, deal with these jets. These things are from the factory for millions of motor combinations. Buick, Olds, Pontiac, Chevy, Caddy, even some Chryslers. So it's unlikely you're going to find a carb right out of the box that is going to run perfectly. But the beauty of Rochester is that literally you can get at this stuff. You can't get at these emulsion tubes in a Holly. They're in the body itself, in that little block, and you really can't get at it the way you can get to these. So if you really want to tune an engine, Rochester can be the way to go. I know a lot of people don't like them, but this is what's involved in doing a Rochester. All right, we'll be back in a bit, and we'll do a motor test. Okay, this is the last test, and this is what the plugs look like. The last mod I made to the carburetor. Alright, rich into fuel log, the fuel metering rods. So those fuel tubes, delivery tubes, got opened up, and this is the result. The surging disappeared. Okay. Looks damn good. Never seen plugs that clean. I didn't run it all that long, but